I've seen a lot of change, been through a lot of pain. Some things are not the same as they were a year ago.
So, Katie, you have a background in a helping field. You're a licensed clinical social worker, and you also have a background in ministry. Tell us a little bit about your story. What led you to this point where you are now in ministry and discipleship?
Yeah, as far back as I can remember, I always wondered, like, is God real? And if he is, like, where is truth? Because my parents both came out of very different religious backgrounds and they did not care for each other's religions. Neither of them were practicing at the time. But so it just created in me kind of this wonder of, like, where is truth? And I've always sought that out, like, what is truth? And I met my husband in college, and actually, he brought me to a pastor where I gave my life to the Lord. He had grown up in a household where his dad had previously been a pastor, but had fallen away, and there was a lot of religion, but no relationship. So he was in rebellion, alcohol and all sorts of stuff when we met in college. And he ran from God for still a couple more years. So we were married about a year and a half before God finally got a hold of him and he surrendered his life to Jesus. So in 2007, we started going to a wonderful church, and we had pastors who just took us under their wings and began to disciple us, and pretty immediately threw us into ministry. They saw the call of God on our life and they began to disciple us. So my husband was leading a Bible study fresh off the streets when he had only read, a couple chapters of Matthew. And so that just kind of, we were always on this accelerated path with our faith of that. And I think that's really where all of this, when I look back, came from, because in that season where I was new in my faith and I was hungry and I was reading the word and just trying to understand it all without having somebody tell me like what it should mean or what it should be, just reading it at face value, and seeing these teens who were struggling and not knowing how to
Mhm.
help them, right? Like there was just, their parents were overwhelmed, they were overwhelmed, and it was like there wasn't a clear path to help them. And so starting with that and then going into counseling and seeing all sorts of families struggling, and at that time feeling more restrained because in our helping field there were limits of what we could do. I wasn't working for a Christian agency. I couldn't just share my faith,
Mm,
in the way that I would have liked to.
yes.
So at the same time I was doing counseling, we were doing ministry. We ended up, my husband was a youth pastor, and then we did young adults ministry, leading up to where we ended up planting several churches, doing missions. So ministry has been our life pretty much since we were saved. And it was through that journey of seeing that now thousands of families that we've worked with, just seeing the struggles of parents, and then of course becoming a parent myself and walking through this
Mm,
journey with my kids. If you read the statistics, as many as 2 out of 3 kids are leaving the Christian faith, even if they're going
yes.
to church and raised in Christian homes. And so I just saw this over and over again. And I counseled lots of people who had left the faith and they were coming back. And so we were trying to help them walk that out, where God just put this burden in my heart that something is missing. We're doing it
Mm,
wrong, right? So many generations where we're
mhm.
seeing so many kids leave the faith, we're not doing it right, because the gospel is good news, right? So
Yes, it
what
is.
what
Yes,
it's
it
not
is.
on God, it's on us. What are we as the church doing wrong
Mhm.
that is leading our kids away from him instead of to him? And so that began really over the last 5 years, a journey through homeschooling and writing books and beginning to create resources for parents, that I felt this burden of, we've got to have something more effective for parents. And that was really what led me to creating Family Faith Building Academy, is saying we need something that makes it easy for parents, that makes it easy for pastors to be able to equip these kids. And we see it now more than ever, right? I mean, we have
Oh,
like the most
yes.
unchurched generation that we've ever
Oh,
encountered,
yes.
and they want nothing to do with the church that they have been taught about. And so that's why, some people think, like, what do you mean put the fun back in the fundamentals of family discipleship? If we're not showing them that the Jesus that we're following is fun and amazing and wonderful, and that life with God is an adventure, then we're missing the boat, and our kids don't want anything to do with that. And so when we can show them that walking out our faith and seeing lives transformed is phenomenal, and there's no better way to live our life, they want a part of that. So even though my kids are younger, right now they're almost 8 and 10, they love Jesus with all their heart. They're praying for people, they're seeing miracles, they're walking out their faith in very tangible ways because we've connected the fun and the faith and we've made it meaningful and memorable. So no matter what, people can always argue with what we know, right? We can debate theology all day long. Even Christians don't agree, right? So that can be
They
debated, but
don't.
nobody can take away our experience, our personal testimony. So when we can give our kids those experiences and they can say, no, I saw and I experienced and I've lived this out, then that faith can't be shaken no matter what the world throws at them. And so
Mhm.
that's really the heart and desire behind Family Faith Building Academy and community.
Well, you're helping teach other parents how to speak their child's language. It's really a love language and a love letter to families.
Absolutely. And discovering that God is in everything. And that's really helping you
Mhm.
to see, when we're looking at the sunset or we're helping out a dog or we're serving our neighbor or whatever we're doing, that we can't turn off our faith, that God is
Mm-mm.
everywhere and in everything. And when we start to see him in everything, that's where there's no shaking our faith because you can't escape it. We're not Sunday Christians. We're not, doing these
Right.
things. It's not these rituals, but it's really who we are in the world that we live in. And so I think that's an important part of helping our kids to discover the beauty that is the gospel.
Yes, it's actually teaching them, and especially right now is what's going on with confusion with identity. You're teaching them it's not who you are, but it's whose you are. That's where your identity comes from.
Absolutely. And when they know that, then it doesn't matter what the world says. It doesn't matter if truth has become this abstract concept because for them it's very concrete. And that's what this discipleship course does is it teaches you how to make all those big abstract concepts very concrete, very applicable, very tangible so that they see the Bible has a solution for every problem they face.
Yes, it always goes back to the word, and I keep thinking of Romans 12 too. And as the way we say in our we are. I am teaching my child to live in this world, but not be of this world, and that is so hard, and it's an ongoing lesson, but it's one that we have to teach diligently.
Absolutely. That was one of the first things that I did in my Dishing Up Devotions book. It's called Being Set Apart.
Hmm.
And we talk about what does it really
Yes.
mean to live set apart. And in that example, I use cookies and what happens when you put two
Hmm.
cookies together on the tray. That
Hmm.
lesson is something I did with my kids when they were younger, and they still talk about it because go ahead
Hmm.
and make two cookies and see what happens. My lovely son was like, it's a butt. And so his joke is like, we don't want to be a butt. We want to live set apart, but it's stuck, right? So when we can do
There
things
you
that they
go.
remember and they're having fun and they're making those connections, then it sticks and you can't get rid of it.
And that's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it. And that's the fun.
Absolutely. Who wants a boring life, right? When people realize
No.
that the fun is actually had within our faith and not apart from our faith, that's where they're okay with being set apart. They're okay with being rejected by the world because what they have is so much better. The peace and the joy and the freedom that they experience, that is not worth what the world has. It's so much more valuable.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you for sharing in your testimony and in your personal experience of how, and it happens to a lot of us, where something has happened in our life where we have been hurt by other Christians or we've been hurt by someone in the faith, and we take a step back away from it. We luckily God always chases us. But what if you have a family or a parent that is interested in returning back to the faith or interested in your program, but they're a little well, they're hurt, they're burdened, they've been burned somewhere somehow along the way. What would you say to those families who are wanting to dip their toe back in that pond of faith? How can Family Faith Building Academy help them?
First, I want to say that you're not alone, that we all have been hurt. If you have been in a church community, you have experienced hurt on some level. And I can tell you, with our family having been pastors and church planners, we have been betrayed by so many people. We've experienced all of those hurts. And so just know that you're not alone. And even Jesus, he was betrayed by Judas, but without Judas, we wouldn't have the redemption story that we have. And God wants to redeem your story. So where you're at right now listening to this, I know that God is speaking to you and wanting to get a hold of you and say that you cannot judge him based on the actions of a fallen person. And so Family Faith Building Academy is a great place to start because it's not requiring you to dive right back into community, which can feel scary and overwhelming. It's saying, you know what, you can start in your home right where you're at, and we'll give you the tools that you need to walk alongside of you to help you to build a faith as a family again and create a foundation that works. And we talk about even how to find the right church, so you have that. And then we also have our family faith building community. If you're saying, you know what, I'm scared, Katie, I'm scared to put myself out there again, then our online community might be exactly what you've been praying for, because it's a safe place for you to go and be loved on without judgment and be able to ask questions in a safe way where you're not going to, experience the kind of pain that you might have experienced in a church community. So it's just other mamas that are saying, you know what, we want to disciple our kids too, and we want the support and the help in very simple ways. So I would love for you to come and join our community and just see if that's not something that would help motivate you and encourage you back on that path. So we offer a free month, so you can come in, no obligation, no payment. Just come in the community and let us love on you and encourage you and support you right where you're at.
Meet them where they are. Yes. Oh, I love that, because it's so true.